Now I'm going to talk about the militia. How many of you in here are in the militia? I am. I'm not afraid to admit it. Okay, I'm going to talk about the militia. If you're not in the militia, you need to be. If you are in the militia, you need to reorganize your thinking, because I guarantee you got the wrong concept of what the militia is, and you're probably operating illegally, unlawfully, unethically, and probably maybe even immorally. And I say that based upon past experience with other militias around the country, not knowing anything about your militia. Now, what's wrong with a militia? Nothing. That's right. What is the militia?
Everybody capable of defending the Constitution.
That's correct. That was the concept in the founding of this nation, was that the people would act as their own defense. That there would never be a standing army. Why? Because they saw what standing armies could do to a civilian population, to enslave them, destroy them in Europe. And they wanted to start what? A new world. They want to get rid of all of that stuff. So they gave us freedom. It's a great gift. They knew we would probably throw it away, but they wanted to give us all the tools to make sure that we could keep it if we really deserved it. And if we did, and we could hang on to it responsibly and not give it away in exchange for some imagined security or benefit from a big central government or a king or something like that, that would be the new world. Okay? A lot of people think that when I tell them what our founding fathers really were, that I'm attacking them, and that if they really were that, they wouldn't have given us freedom and all this kind of stuff. Baloney. They understood human nature. They gave us our freedom, knowing that human nature is to give it up in exchange for a promised security, even if it means we have to go into slavery. Because they understood what it took me a long time to figure out, because I really didn't understand all this in the beginning either. And usually I find the true answer by just looking within myself. Don't we usually spend the first 20 years of our life trying to get away from home and become free and responsible? Doesn't everybody, their big dream is, gee, I'll be glad when I'm out of Daddy's house and I can go where I want to and I don't have to be in by midnight and I can drive my car, and, you know, isn't that true? How many of you think that's true? Good. And isn't it also true that once we get out there and understand what's really required and how responsible we are and how hard it is, we spend the rest of our life trying to find somebody that'll take care of us? Huh? Isn't that true? Isn't that why a lot of guys go in the military? Oh, I'm leaving home and it's a hard world out there. No, I'm going in the service. They'll give me a bed and food and all that kind of stuff and send me around the world, and I get to see everybody, have a girl at every port, and boy, it's fine, huh? And then you find out what that is. It's socialism. And some guys love it and they stay in for life. Some of them even convince themselves that they're doing great service for their country, which is what I was involved in. Convincing myself that I was doing great service for my country. It was my plan to stay in the military forever until I figured it all out and saw what was really going on. When they made a mistake and put me in the Office of Naval Intelligence and I became the briefing team member for Admiral Bernard Cleary and got to see the truth, I said, whoa, I'm leaving. And I was gone. That's why you can't depend upon these guys sitting around the VFW and the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion halls to help us in this battle. They spent their life in the military. They are socialists. All they give a damn about, and I don't care if it pisses you off if you're one of them, because it's the truth. And I'll stand and duke it out with you face to face over it if you want to. It's the truth. The only thing they give a damn about is sitting around in those halls, getting drunk and telling lies about how brave they are and getting their retirement check every month. They have been trained to be socialists, and they are going to be good little socialists forever. Okay? It's the truth. Absolute truth. Anybody who's receiving a government check is not going to help us in this battle. That includes old folks on Medicare and everything else. If you can't turn around and walk away from it now, you're not going to help us in this battle. You have been socialized. Sorry if it makes you angry, but it's true, because you're not going to do anything to jeopardize your little checky-wecky, right? But the truth is, free people don't get little checky-weckies from Big Brother. They don't do it. And Social Security is not an insurance policy. It's a hook. It's a hook, along with all the rest of these benefits and things. You cannot accept the benefit from Big Brother without enslaving yourself in the process. Okay? Now, I know I've just really severely made some of you angry, but I promised you I would do that when I came in, and I never, ever go back on my promise. So I want you to think about that. Let's get back to the subject at hand, militias. Militias are absolutely necessary to a free people. The Founding Fathers knew this. They couldn't ignore it even if they wanted to, because the people knew it. Who was it that stopped the Redcoats when they went to seize the arms at Lexington?
The militia.
The militia. How were they described by the British commander? We marched to the bridge and were met by a group of farmers with guns who drew up in a somewhat military order and opposed us. That's how they were described. They weren't military people. They were farmers. Who can call up the militia? Traditionally in this country, any responsible person could call forth the militia for any responsible reason. It's still that way today. Is the National Guard the militia? No. Well, no, you're wrong. It is the militia of the federal United States. You see, the National Guard cannot ever be the militia of the state. Why? Because it violates all the rules. It can be federalized and therefore could never stand in defense of the state against a central government turned despotic or tyrannical. Therefore, the National Guard cannot be the militia. It also violates the other rules. Who trains the officers of the National Guard? The regular Army. The United States trains those officers. To be militia, the officers must be trained by the state, don't they? Okay. So the National Guard is not the militia of the state. It is the militia of the United States. That's true. There's also another militia of the United States. It's the unorganized militia of the United States of America. And who is that? It's everybody between the ages of 17 and 45 who are capable of serving in the capacity of a militiaman. The law specifically says men and boys. Who cannot be in the unorganized militia of the United States of America? The Vice President, the President, any elected officer cannot be a member. National Guard cannot be a member. Any member of the military forces of the United States of America cannot be a member of the militia. Why? Because they're under control of the very people who could subvert the government and become a tyrant to the people, aren't they? And the purpose of the militia is to prevent that. The militia has three functions. What are they? Who can name them off? There's only three. Repel invasion, suppress insurrection, and enforce the laws of the Union. Actually, it says execute the laws of the Union. Repel invasion, suppress insurrection, and execute the laws of the Union. Why does it say execute the laws of the Union instead of obey the President? If the President tears up the Constitution and becomes a tyrant, it's up to the militia to enforce the laws of the Union and arrest the President, isn't it? That's the function of the militia. The same in the state. Any state, the function of the militia is to repel invasion, suppress insurrection, execute the laws of the state, and any other constitutional lawful purpose to which the governor may call them up to perform. What is a lawful militia? Can you put together a bunch of guys and say we're the militia? Can you? The white shirt?
Yes.
That's right. But you have to say they're militia? They're already the militia. You are the militia. You don't even have to get together. You're the militia. You can get together with anybody else in here who is the militia or who wants to volunteer to be a member of the militia, and you can form a unit of the unorganized militia of the state, or if the Constitution of the state specifies it, the constitutional militia of the state, like they do in Texas, the constitutional militia of Texas, okay? And you can get together and you can have meetings and you can train and you can prepare to function as militiamen. Is this lawful? Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's nobody who can do anything to stop you. Can you appoint yourself colonel and become commander of the militia?
You have to be elected, don't you?
In the absence of appointment of rank by the governor of your state, officers must be elected by the militia. So you elect your officers. You cannot appoint yourself, and nobody can appoint you. The militia elects the officers, and they're elected to serve in those capacities for certain periods of time. During a lawful, organized training exercise, you give an order which somebody disobeys, can they be punished? Not only can be, must be. Must be. If you don't, what do you have? You have anarchy. You don't have a militia, and the first time you go into battle, you're going to have people doing what they want to do instead of what they have to do to win that battle, don't you? So it's not can, but must be. Must be in every instance. When they elect you to be an officer, your order was lawful and right under the circumstances, they must obey that order. If they don't, you must have some system set up to punish that member or expel that member from the militia body. What body of rules governs the militia? Uniform Code of Military Justice, and every lawfully formed militia must have a copy of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and everybody must understand how it operates. Must militia members be under oath? Absolutely. If they cannot take an oath of loyalty to the Constitution of the United States of America and of their state, how can you trust them? How can you trust them? The answer is you cannot. Can you substitute an affirmation for an oath? An affirmation is as legally binding as an oath. It's the truth. If somebody says, I can't take an oath on religious grounds, can you accept them? You can take them if they agree to take an affirmation. If they refuse to take the affirmation on religious grounds, can you accept them? No! The militia is not a religious organization. It's a military organization, and you must be able to trust the members of the militia. And if they cannot be under oath or affirmation, you cannot trust them. You cannot accept them. You cannot have them in your organization. Period. Cut and dried, no. Can you accept a convicted felon in a militia organization? No. Why not? Bad character? What if he paid for his crime and he's never done anything bad again? He can't own a weapon. Now, there's two reasons why you can't do this. Number one, he cannot own or be in possession of a weapon. So you're jeopardizing this person's life if you let them come around weapons and they're seen or a photograph is taken with them just touching a weapon. They could go back to prison, and you don't want that to happen to them. Okay? Aside from the fact that they can't own a weapon, can't use a weapon, touch a weapon, or hold a weapon, which means they have to function in some administrative capacity, there is a liability propaganda-wise. If the press finds out you have convicted felons in your militia, what are they going to do? They're going to rake you over the coals, and you don't need that. So what you do is you put these people in reserve, and you say you are not an active part of this militia. You are, by law of the land, a member of the militia, though you can't take part in our unit. If war breaks out, you come running and we'll give you a gun, because then it won't matter whether you have a gun or not, right? That's how you treat those people. Don't make them feel bad because they committed a crime or did something wrong in their life and paid the price for it, because I can assure you, everybody in this room has done something wrong at some point in their life. Most of us have determined we're not going to do it again. What kind of exercises can you do with a militia? You can have any kind of militia you want to, as long as you state it that you are that type of militia and that you have certain goals and purposes in your training exercises. You can have a militia of artillery. Did you know that? You can have a militia of armor. You can have a transportation company or battalion. You can be a militia company or battalion or even regiment. You can be an Air Force. Second Continental Army of the Republic has an Air Force. Didn't know that, did you? We do have a few MiGs. We also have jet fighters. Didn't know that either, did you? But I won't tell you where or who flies them. I will tell you that we have them. You can have any kind of militia that you want, as long as it is for a legitimate military purpose and that it's spelled. You can't change yourself from infantry to armor to artillery every 3 weeks. You have to establish the unit as a specific type of unit and equip and train for that mission. You have to do that. Now, I see a lot of people shaking their heads when I say you can be an artillery unit. It happens to be the truth. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. Anybody know the case? The case was where a guy was arrested for having a shotgun, parading around in public with it, and he took it all the way to the Supreme Court, stating that he was legally authorized to own that gun and that they couldn't take it away from him because he was in the militia. And the Supreme Court ruled that the shotgun was a weapon of the militia and that he was authorized to have, possess, use, and train with any weapon that is a proper weapon for a militia, including artillery for an artillery unit, armor for an armor unit, rifles for an infantry unit, etc. Didn't know that, did you? You got to read the law, folks. You got to study the law. The militia is iron bound in this country. Do you really believe in your wildest dreams there would be any militia in this country if it was illegal? They would have come after us a long, long time ago, not just vilify us in the press. That's to try to discredit us in the eyes of the sheeple for the day when the fighting starts so that we won't have any popular support. That's really what that's all about. You see, because if the militia was unlawful, unconstitutional, and we were doing something wrong, they would have come after us a long time ago. And you're right, the war would have started then. So you see, there is a legal militia. There's a lawful militia. There's a constitutional militia. Most of the militias that you see in the public eye are not legitimate, lawful militia. Is a militia that says only Christians can belong to this militia and we're going to call ourselves the 4th Missouri Volunteer Christian Militia. Is that a militia? No, it's a religious army made up of religious members of some particular sect of Christianity as a whole, and if you don't believe in what they believe in, you're liable to end up fighting them, okay? A militia is a military organization, not a religious organization, and don't ever get the two confused. You can't go to a militia meeting and turn it into a prayer meeting. And you can't go to a prayer meeting and after you get through with the sermon, have a militia meeting. You cannot do it. You can go to a militia meeting and you can have a chaplain and you can ask the chaplain to say a prayer, and that's okay. But if you have one Jewish guy that doesn't like that and he wants to say a Jewish prayer, you better let him. You better let him, or you're not a militia. Understand that. Militia is to protect our freedom so that we can worship at the altar of our choice. It is not to dictate to us which religion or altar we're to worship at or start to say who can be a member of the militia based upon what their religious preference is. And anytime we get away from that, we are destroying freedom for all of us. Understand this, and understand it clearly. If I take away your freedom, I have taken away the freedom of everyone in this room. Everyone. And everyone who allows me to do it is complicit in that treason. Take away the rights of one, you have taken away the rights of all. Now, we must have militias. If you don't belong to a militia, you need to join one. If you don't know where a militia is that you can join, form one. Advertise. You cannot do it in secret, you must do it in public. You do not have to have all of your activities publicly known, but you must be public. You must never talk to the press under any circumstances whatsoever, period, except when authorized by the commanding officer to issue a statement that has been pre-prepared to be delivered by the officer who has been appointed to be the public affairs officer, and he is to make no statement, answer no questions, only read what he has been given to read, and then shut his stupid mouth.
Arming of the militia is not left to the state but to the citizen. However, should the state choose to arm its citizen militia, it is free to do so, bearing in mind that the Constitution is not a document limiting the citizen, but rather limiting the power of government. But should the state fail to arm its citizen militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms becomes the source of the guarantee that the state will not be found defenseless in the presence of a threat to its security. It makes no sense whatsoever to look to the Constitution of the United States or that of any state for permission to form a citizen militia, since logically the power to permit is also the power to deny. If brought to its logical conclusion in this case, government may deny the citizen the right to form a militia. If this were to happen, the state would assert itself as the principal of the contract, making the people the agents. Liberty then would depend on the state's grant of liberty. Such a concept is foreign to American thought. While the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution recognizes the existence of the state militia and recognizes their necessity for securing a free state, and while it also recognizes that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, the Second Amendment is not the source of the right to form a militia nor to keep and bear arms. Those rights existed in the states prior to the formation of the Federal Union. In fact, the right to form militia and to keep and bear arms exists from antiquity. The enumeration of those rights in the Constitution underscores their natural occurrence and importance. According to the 10th Amendment, ultimate power over the militia is not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution. Consequently, the power of the militia remains in the hands of the people. Again, the fundamental function of the militia in society remains with the people. Therefore, the Second Amendment recognizes that the militia's existence and the security of the state rests ultimately in the people, who volunteer their persons to constitute the militia and their arms to supply its firepower. The primary defense of the state rests with the citizen militia bearing its own arms. Fundamentally, it is not the state that defends the people, but the people who defend the state. The second line of defense of the state consists of a statutory organization known as the National Guard. Whereas the National Guard is solely the creation of statutory law, the militia derives its existence from the inherent inalienable rights which existed before the Constitution and whose importance are such that they merit specific recognition in that document. While the National Guard came into existence as the result of legislative activity, the militia existed before there was a nation or a constitutional form of government. The militia, consisting of people owning and bearing personal weapons, is the very authority out of which the United States Constitution grew. This point must be emphasized. Neither the citizen's militia nor the citizen's private arsenal can be an appropriate subject of federal regulation. It was the armed militia of the American colonies whose own efforts ultimately led to the establishment of the United States of America. While some may say that the right to keep and bear arms is granted to Americans by the Constitution, just the opposite is true. The federal government itself is the child of the armed citizen. We, the people, are the parent of the child we call government. You, senators, are part of the child that we, the people, gave life to. The increasing amount of federal encroachment into our lives indicates the need for parental corrective action. In short, the federal government needs a good spanking to make it behave. One other important point needs to be made. Since the Constitution is the limiting document upon the government cannot become greater than the granting power. It is the servant of we, the people.